Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. Happy Tuesday and happy October. Hope you're doing well. This has been such a wonderful fall so far. And as always, I need to thank some folks who helped me get this program up and going. So it's always Tom Roth with our CTSI, Courtney Hayes with our Best Health Program, Audrey Belfaro with our STIC Center, with our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and you. Because again, if we didn't have you, there'd be nothing to do on the second Tuesday of every month. And I want to give a special shout out to some new friends I made this morning at the Kernersville Newcomers and Neighbors Club. I think it's maybe Neighbors and Newcomers Club, an amazing group of people that are doing their very best to age well. So I think some of them are joining us tonight. So welcome. We're so glad to have you. You know, this is a fun crowd, and I love it when I'm out in the community and people will say, Deb, is that you? And I'll go, yeah. And they go, we know it. We know you from your voice, or you know, we know your face. And I love it when people greet me. So every time y'all see me, give me a shout out, because I love it. I love to see you. And I look forward to the time that we really can truly be all back together again. And I'm just hopeful that day's coming. Well, we're going to get started with our first cooking segment. And if you read your promo, you're going to know that the chef tonight is somebody awfully special to me. My sweet husband, Don, is a physician by training, but a home chef by passion. And, you know, I get all these emails with ideas of different topics, and just know that I run with those. I take every idea y'all give me and explore it and see what I can do about achieving that for you. But so many people always write in to say how much they appreciate Don's cooking segments, because literally he does it in our kitchen. And so these are things that are achievable, and they're easy, and they're delicious. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my sweet husband and let him demonstrate his walnut rosemary crusted salmon dish for you.
Well, thank you, Deb, and it's great to be back with Aging Well. I'm going to do another sheet pan, single pan dinner tonight. It's going to be walnut rosemary crusted salmon with baked potatoes, and we're going to eat it with a little salad on the side to get some green and fresh. I'm going to make it for two tonight. The recipe is for four. For two, I'm using about a ½ pound of potatoes. And I'm using really tiny ones, so I've just cut them in half. But if you're using larger ones, you want about 1-inch pieces, so you may need to quarter them, or if you've got big potatoes, even more. So they're halved in the bowl, and it's the simplest thing in the world. I'm just going to sprinkle them with a little salt, pepper, olive oil, and some kind of seasoning. I'm going to use paprika tonight. I think it makes it gives it a nice pretty color as well as a good flavor. This is sweet. You could use smoked, just really anything you want. And I'm going to add just a little garlic powder for a little extra flavor there. Just a couple of sprinkles. And I'm going to just mix these by hand. Kind of distribute all the spices there. And put it in a single layer in the sheet pan. And then pop that in a 425-degree oven that I've preheated. Now the potatoes are going to cook about 30 minutes. You want them to get them nice and brown, and at 425, that's about the right time. And the salmon's going to cook for 12-13 minutes, depending on how well you like it. So we've got about 20 minutes to prepare the dressing for the salmon. So what I've done is already taken 3 tablespoons of breadcrumbs. I use panko breadcrumbs, And I'm going to add an equal amount, 3 tablespoons of finely chopped walnuts. Now, the walnuts, as you buy them chopped, are not chopped enough, so I'm going to want to get them about the same consistency as the panko. So I'll just chop them. So you can see I've chopped them pretty fine there, and I'm going to add that to the panko, 3 tablespoons. And a pinch. And to that, just a little bit of olive oil, about a teaspoon, just moisten it. It helps it stick when you put it on. And I'll just mix that up. And set that aside. And now we want to make the honey mustard rosemary glaze, and that's going to have 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, 1 clove of garlic. You can either mince it fine, or I'm just crushing it. And 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of zested lemon. I really like these hand microplaners. They really make it easy. And by the way, I've washed everything beforehand, and that includes the citrus, because if you're going to zest the citrus in there, you want to get any pesticides off the lemon. And you just want to take only the yellow part. You don't want to get down into the white. And that might be a little bit more than called for, but I love lemon zest, so that's okay. And about a teaspoon of lemon juice. You just squeeze it in by hand, makes it easier. And about a teaspoon of finely chopped rosemary. I'm using fresh. You can use dried. Dried and fresh, sometimes the herbs, when they're dried, have actually quite a different flavor. So it's kind of fun to mix it up. This could be dried also, but it would give it a little bit different flavor and appearance. The rosemary, just about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And a little bit of honey. This is good North Carolina sourwood honey. Any honey will do. And about a 1/2 teaspoon of that. The recipe that you will receive in the email also adds some hot pepper to it. You can leave that out if you like. I think it gives it a nice little color, a little flavor, a little heat. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more than called for. I like it too much. And I'm just going to mix that up well. Now I'm going to get the salmon out of the fridge. I'm going to wash it and dry it, and then we'll put the topping on. Okay, so I've washed the salmon, and you can see these are fairly hefty fillets. Sometimes, especially the wild caught you get in the grocery, will be a little bit thinner, and you'd want to cut back on the cooking time a little bit if that's the case. And so all I'm going to do is distribute the glaze. I made the recipe, as I said, I'm making the recipe for the amounts for 4, so I'm going to have some left over here. You could have cut it in half, but I wanted a little bit extra because I like it heavy on the sauce. So we put that on, and now I can grab the crumbs. And you're just going to kind of want to pat those on nicely. And I'll cut the tomatoes in half while the fish is cooking and finish the salad. Okay, the potatoes have been in now about 20 minutes, and so I'm going to clear the space here for the hot pan. And they're just starting to get a little color on them, so that's good. And it's not absolutely necessary, but if you'll get more even browning if you kind of toss them around a little bit. And then I'm going to put the salmon fillets over here. And the recipe calls for spraying a little oil. It just helps kind of hold the crumbs together and hold them on. And I can pop these back in the oven for the last 12-13 minutes of cooking. If you have a thermometer, you can check the inside temperature of the salmon because, as I said, with different thicknesses, it'll take different time. You'll read officially the USDA says 145 degrees, which most people would think nowadays is really too dry. So 130 is a lot better. If you get it to 130, then it'll still cook another 5 degrees while it's sitting and resting before you eat. So that's probably a better one to aim at. Best way, of course, is take a fork and just kind of separate the layers and see whether it's done to your liking. So we got 12 minutes, and while we do that, I'm just going to really simply dress the salad. There's plenty of flavor in the fish and potatoes. You don't need a ton on the salad. Simplicity is wonderful, so I'm just going to put a little salt, a little pepper, oil, and vinegar. And we'll toss that before we eat. Okay, so we're just wait for the fish. Okay, well, 13 minutes have passed, and so I'm going to pull the salmon out and the potatoes. Turn off the oven. Oh, perfectly brown. I did 13 minutes because they were a little bit thicker. These can rest a few minutes. Like I said, that kind of completes the cooking process. I'll go on and start plating a little bit of salad. potatoes. Salmon, and just a little bit of parsley for color, optional. Don't need it. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. If you got company coming over, it's a nice touch. And a nice little quarter of lemon from the other half of the lemon, or from the other half of the lemon that you squeezed. So here's the dish, and we're ready to eat.
Well, I can tell y'all from very personal experience, dinner was wonderful. And what was great about it was the cleanup was a piece of cake, because y'all remember that Don is the chef in the family and I'm the cleaner. I'm very happy with my place in the food chain too, by the way. And so it was really nice that cleanup was not as bad as it could have been, but it was just wonderful. So as always, honey, thank you so much for sharing. For Don, that's his therapy. He said that's a great way for him to relax, and he enjoys cooking, and I like him to be relaxed. So it's a good combination. So we're going to move on to our virtual road trip. You know, and one thing that I put in the promo for this month is Winston-Salem is known for the city of arts and innovation. And there really are beautiful art installations all over town. And so many of these are in very public spaces that we can all enjoy. And one that I had heard about, and it really just took some time to track down the right person at Winston-Salem State University to really help give us the tour, were these murals, these phenomenal murals over there. And I'm not going to say too much about them because I want our curator to be able to give you the tour. I'm going to read it. Tom Flynn is the Assistant Director of Archives and Special Collections at Winston-Salem State University. And so he is going to give us a tour, a little bit of the history, as well as a couple other interesting sites to see on the campus of Winston-Salem State. So Tom?
Thanks, Deb. It's great to be a part of Aging Well. My name is Tom Flynn again, and I'd like to welcome you to the campus of WSSU and the C.G. O'Kelly Library. Today we're going to focus on some of the sites that you can see here on campus and some of the history of our campus as well. So come on in with me and let's get started. Welcome inside to the O'Kelly Library. We are now standing inside the main atrium, home to the two biggest murals to which we want to focus on today. So behind me you can see one of the two murals within O'Kelly Library. They are both 30 feet tall, and while they're called murals, they are technically on canvas on the walls. This was at the request of the artists, James and John Biggers, both from Gastonia, North Carolina. They wanted to make sure that if anything happened, should they ever need to be moved, that they could be, that they weren't attached to the wall in a way that they couldn't be transported if they needed to be. So they're 30 feet in height, and they are on either side of a grand staircase in O'Kelly Library. And one of the benefits of this is that you can see it from every level of the building. We do have an elevator so you can access each floor, no matter your mobility, and you can get a view, the different views of the murals from each perspective. And this is a great thing as a viewer. So the O'Kelly Library was built in 1967, and that was one half of the building. We quickly ran out of space as the university continued to grow, and in the it was actually the late 80s, early 90s, the second half of the building, the one behind me, was built. As part of that, the Delta Fine Arts commissioned the two murals to be donated to the university. So what they did was, while the building was being built, the two artists were actually on movable scaffolding, painting the mural each day, multiple points each day. People were able to watch them as they painted. Sometimes they would paint something, come back the next day and decide they didn't like what they had done and paint over it. So as you're viewing it, you can kind of see some layering that the two artists had done. So it began in 1989. The murals, John Biggers was brought on. He also brought his nephew James Biggers to help him out. The paintings, the murals were completed in 1992 and became open to the public, and I will step out of the way so you can view them at greater detail. While this art is grand in scale, it is made to be accessible to the public, so you're welcome here. As long as the library is open, you're more than welcome to come and spend as much time as you'd like looking over the murals. And believe me, you're going to need some time because there's symbolism and detail on a grand scale, so make sure you plan to spend some time really enjoying and looking at the murals in depth. What we have available here in the library, and you can ask any staff member for it, are these great guides. They're viewer guides. They tell you a little bit more about the murals, the history of them, and the symbolism within them. There's some things to look at and also think about while you're viewing them. And they're free to pick up, and I'll have Deb send you all a copy so you can view it before you come in, to give you a little history before you start actually viewing the murals. Also, while you're here, don't be afraid to come and stop into the university archives, where we do have a poem written by Maya Angelou that was actually lithographed by John Biggers, so very similar artwork, and it can kind of give you a little broader context to the artwork of the Biggers. And I mentioned before the Biggers artwork in conjunction with the poem Our Grandmothers by Maya Angelou. We actually have a copy of it here. You are welcome to come to the University Archives. It's open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You do not need to make an appointment, but it is nice to know when to expect people because our staff is limited. So if you call ahead, we're more than happy to set that up. And you can come see this poem and other works and learn more about the history of the university through photographs, yearbooks, old student newspapers, and anything else you might be interested to see. All right, so we'll leaf through a couple of the pages here. Now this copy was actually, these are limited edition copies that were made. You can tell by the scope that this is a large book. And this was actually donated by Maya Angelou to the University Archives for us to house in the collection. And you can get a sense of the similarities, obviously, in John Biggers' style from the murals also to these lithographs here in the book. So this is one of the ones we actually had the art-based school came to visit, and the students loved this one because of the little baby elephant here in the screen. And behind me, you'll see on display right now is the awards of Coach William Bill Hayes, who was former football coach, athletic director, had a long history of success here on campus. You can come see some of his awards and kind of the outpouring of support that he had from former students and players. And you're welcome to come here. We have great collections related to the civil rights activities in Winston-Salem, including the founding papers of the Black Panther Party here in Winston-Salem. We've got stuff athletic-wise, history of the university, so you can see some famous alumni. It really just depends on what you like. We've got collections related to just about every topic that could be of interest, so please just stop in. We're happy to interact and show you kind of the history of the university and its impact locally and nationally. And for those of you who might not know much about the history of WSSU, just a few steps away from the library, you can come see this bell. The significance of this bell was it's actually on the site of the first building ever on campus, called Lamson Hall. Now, Lamson Hall was built with bricks from our very own brickyard, and so students helped build the bricks, but they also helped lay the foundation for the building. So that first building on campus really was an act of love from the students to the campus. And it was really a kind of service learning process, which they still do on campus to this day. So now the building, Lamson Hall, sat next to a church, People's Choice Church, and they used the bell of the church to signify class change, mealtime, things like that. And so as the campus expanded, the church moved off campus, and they donated the bell to the university to kind of signify that relationship from its founding in 1892. The university started in 1892 as Slater Industrial Academy, and that's why we had a brickyard, a farm, and all of those other industrial type trades. And we slowly grew until we became a teacher's college in the 20s. And then in the 60s, we became Winston-Salem State College. And in 1972, we joined the UNC system to be one of the 17 institutions, and we became known as Winston-Salem State University. During those years, the university continued to grow to its current enrollment of 5,000 students. That includes the School of Health Sciences, which is nursing, healthcare management, and the like, as well as the humanities, religion, geography, history, gerontology, and all those programs as well. And as we talk about the founding of the university, I would be remiss to not mention Simon Atkins. Simon Atkins was our founder and first president of the college. He and his wife had this dream of building a school to educate African Americans in the Winston-Salem area. So they approached a philanthropist in Connecticut named John Fox Slater, who had $1 million fund for the education of African Americans in the South. They brought his plan, they brought the plan to John Fox Slater and got the initial funding for what became Slater Industrial Academy and what is now WSSU. Now, Simon Atkins and his wife realized that if they were going to build a school to support a neighborhood, they needed to live in that neighborhood. So what became Columbian Heights, which is the neighborhood with which WSSU still stands, Simon Atkins and his wife built their first house, which is behind me now. It has moved from its original location, but it is now on the historic registry, so nothing can happen to the building in terms of renovations. And so it sits now in kind of the heart of the campus to remind everyone of the initial effort and dream of Simon Atkins and his wife and kids. I'd like to thank you all for spending your time with me here on the campus of WSSU, and I hope you do find some time to come visit us. Deb will be sending you a campus map with where to park and how to access the library. Remember, we are a public university, so you can come visit us anytime we're open. Also included will be a description of the murals in the library so you can read up on them before you visit. And I'd like to leave you all with a quote by our founder, Simon Atkins, here on the clock tower, which reads, "Education is primarily an effort to realize in man his possibilities as a thinking and feeling being." Thank you all, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Tom. It really was a wonderful, wonderful morning that I got to spend there. And the cameras, the recording do not do those murals justice. They are simply breathtaking, both in their size and the detail within. So I would invite and encourage everyone on this webinar, if you live locally, it might be worth a trip, even if you don't, to spend some time and go out and really just get to enjoy them because they are quite beautiful. So let's get down to business. You know, I am one of us. I am one of the lucky ones that say I get to age well. And I had my 65th birthday this past July. And you know what? You learn a lot when you turn 65. And of course, I'm still working, so I'm not on Medicare. But, my doctor and I had a lot of talks about things I can continue to do well, to continue aging well, because she certainly understands my passion for this. I mean, I couldn't work at the Stick Center and not practice what they preach. So, but I had the opportunity to reach out to a colleague, Ann Lake, and I'm going to look over so I can read her credentials. She is a doctor in nurse practice at the Fracture Prevention Program at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist. And so they recently received the first award from our Joint Commission. That's kind of the way to describe it. It's kind of like the Quality Control Better Business Bureau for medical centers for hospitals. And they received the country's first gold award for their fracture prevention program. So she comes with a lot of experience, and I think she shares a passion, like many of us do, for aging well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lake, and please share with us what you know.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Can you see it on your end?
I can. Yes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Deb mentioned passion, and it's always great when your passion and your career go together. I am going to be speaking on something that I'm very passionate about, not only because I love helping patients, but because I've experienced personally in my life patients and people and family members that have struggled with bone health. And so I myself am, like Deb, very passionate about wanting to stay healthy and strong as I continue to age. So when I was asked to speak on this, I was thrilled because World Osteoporosis Day is October 20th. Please check out the Bone Health Osteoporosis Foundation website, because we have a leadership, one of the legendary folks, Irish Apfel is one of our ambassadors, and I know some of you all know who she is, and so we have a lot of things going on in bone health, particularly this month. So I'm thrilled to be with you, and I want to spend just a few minutes about talking about bone health in men and women, and it is a key to successful aging for many reasons. So I want to pose a question to you as we get started, and that particular question is, what does healthy bone look like to you, or what does healthy aging look like to you, and successful aging? You watch these programs, and you are interested in staying healthy and staying active and staying independent. So what does that look like to you? And I'm looking to advance my slides here. I'm having a little bit of struggle here. Let me see if I need to do something else on my end. Let's see. Let me try this. Sorry, Debbie, I'm not sure why it wouldn't advance, but we'll try this. Okay. Yeah, so what I want you to do is I want you to think about, what does successful aging look like to you? And put your comments in the box, because at the end of the presentation, I want to look at those comments, and I want to see how it plays a role in what we're talking about today. But why is good bone health important? Well, your responses are going to tell me why. Why is it important to you? What makes things tick for you in your bone health, right? What makes things tick for you in your health as you're aging? Our bones play a big role in many parts of our body, but main thing in providing structure, protecting organs, and it's really an anchor for those muscles. And we need a lot of calcium. We need strong calcium to keep our bones healthy and strong. So our bones are critical to the structure of who we are. right? So good health, bone health, we kind of joke about it in our circle of expertise, and we say that actually osteoporosis is a childhood disease with adult consequences. So we actually should start early in taking care of our bones. And we learned as children that we needed to make sure we get enough calcium and vitamin D and those kind of things, and stay active. But you know what? Those same principles in childhood actually carry over into adulthood. And it's even more critical as we get older to make sure that we have maintained those levels of activity and we have adequate nutrients and adequate protein and adequate nutrition. So what makes up bone strength? Well, many of you may have had a bone density test. A bone density test is a test that actually looks at the thickness of your bone. So your bone strength is actually made up of how thick your bones are, or how mineralized your bones are, and what the quality of your bone looks like. So many people get very focused as they get older on, you know, what their bone density looks like, or how thick their bones are, or what the interpretation of that test may mean. And actually, it's not just about the bone density test, because what we're really most interested in, like you, is your bone strength. And your bone strength is equal to your bone density plus the quality of your bone. And we're going to talk just briefly about some of the things that can certainly affect the quality of your bones as you age. So one thing that happens, and this is what a lot of people do not understand when they come to see me for their bone health, you know, they want to know, well, why are my bones fragile? Or why did I break a bone? Or why did my doctor tell me I have osteoporosis? I've been healthy my whole life. I don't take hardly any medications. I'm a very healthy person. You know, why am I being told that I have this disease now? Well, the reason that our bones become fragile or change over time is because our bones are constantly going through what's called a remodeling cycle. And the example that I give is, I say, our bones are like remodeling. You're taking out the old and you're actually putting in the new. And that's what happens inside our bone. When we're younger, we make a lot of new bone fast and we lose very little. But when we age, as we age, we actually start to lose bone faster than we're able to gain. So our bone density can change over time. If you've ever had a bone density test, you might have a test that is normal 1 year, and then 5 years later, you have bone loss, and it doesn't make any sense because nothing's really seemed to have changed. So I want to pose the question to you and pause for a minute, and I'll let Deb help me look at the chat box. But I want to ask, what age do you think that we reach our peak bone mass years? How old do you think we are when we actually have the most bone in our bank account or in our skeleton?
And Anne, let me ask you to ask them, put your comments in the Q&A section.
Okay.
It looks like maybe the chat has been disabled.
Okay. Okay. So if you don't mind going to the Q&A session, then you can put your answers in there. That'll be great. I see that there's some answers coming in. Debbie, I'm going to let you look at those so that I don't mess up my slide presentation. We'll just wait just another minute here. We've got some, okay. So Deb, what kind of answers are you seeing coming in? 40,
so I'm
30.
seeing 40, 35, 30, 30, 35,
Yeah,
40.
yeah, okay, good. So this is great. So I want you to keep that in mind now, okay? Because it makes sense if you think about it. Our peak bone mass years, we actually we are in our 30s and are between 25 and 35 to 40. That is our peak bone mass years. And I'm sorry, but my thing has paused again. You got to love technology, right? Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, so our peak bone mass occurs between 20, 30, and 40. So really what's interesting is before that time, we're building a lot of bone and losing very little. And then between 20, 30, and 40, we're actually building bone and losing bone about equally. So we are getting this new bone structure, and we basically get a new skeleton about every 10 years. Now, what I kind of pose to my patients that I talk to and people that I speak with about bone health, basically, you know, it's kind of like our bank account before retirement and after retirement. When we're working, we're putting money in and we're taking money out, and we probably have an even bank account and hopefully a little bit of surplus. But as we get older and we retire, we may sometimes take out more than what we actually are able to put back in, right? Well, that's what happens with our bone health. After we reach our peak bone mass years, the remodeling continues, but we actually start to lose bone faster than we're able to replace. And what do you think happens during that time? That process occurs where we're losing more bone. And as we age, the quality of our bone also starts to decline. And that causes our bones to become weak and brittle. And so that condition is called osteoporosis. So my next question is, what is the most common complication faced by someone with osteoporosis or brittle bones? And Deb, I'm going to let you look at those answers for me if you don't mind.
All right.
And I say this, I'm hoping that no one on the call or on the webinar has actually suffered this consequence. I'm hoping, yes,
Fractures would be the answer.
that is correct. So fragile bone fractures, and many people get confused if we say fragile bone fractures, we actually mean broken bone. So if I say fracture, I mean broken or vice versa. So that is correct. That is the consequence. Now, what do you think fractures or broken bones will do to a person that's getting older, right? They're much harder to heal. If you have grandchildren or young people and they have a fracture, you know, they're healed like that, lickety split. An older person that has a fracture, it takes them much longer to heal. So this is a picture of what gradual weakening of the bones often looks like. So at 40, you can see that there's a little bit of porosity. At age 60, there's even more porosity and there's a lot of thinning going on. And then you can see at age 70 what it oftentimes look like. So this is one of the signs that you have some bone loss. If you say you've had more than 1.5 inches of height loss since your 20s, okay, and you're in your mid 50s and older, and you've had that much height loss, you need to consider what's going on in your bone health and bone quality. So what affects bone health? Well, certainly calcium in the diet, physical activity. If you smoke or you consume too much alcohol, we usually say that's more than 3 units of alcohol of spirits a day, or more than 1 8-ounce beer or 6-ounce glass of wine daily. Females are more likely to develop osteoporosis than males. However, males can also get osteoporosis. So I post you, if you have a backbone, you can get osteoporosis, male or female. Okay, so sex does play a role. What your size is, what your age is, advancing age is more of a risk factor. What your race is, your family history, which I have family history of osteoporosis, so I'm very keen on watching my bone health. Hormonal levels, for women, it's estrogen loss, and for males, it's actually lower testosterone. So men actually go through menopause. They begin to lose testosterone over time as well, and gradually will begin to have some bone loss associated with changes in that hormone. If someone has eating disorders, and then there's certain medications that can also cause bone loss. I'm not going to highlight everything on this slide, but I will speak shortly about medications, because I believe that there's a lot of medications out there that people are unfamiliar with about how they can affect their bones. And I think it's important that you be aware of some of those things. So my question to you is, okay, so if 1 in 2 women will develop osteoporosis, how likely are men to develop osteoporosis? And again, use your Q&A if you can.
Oh, we've got an A, mostly B's coming in as your answers.
Okay, good. And actually B is correct. At this point in time, there has been some literature that says it may be more like 1 in 3, but right now statistically it is 1 in 4. So that's actually pretty high risk. And here's the issue. even though women have a higher risk of getting osteoporosis after menopause, 1 and 2, men that actually have osteoporosis and have fractures actually have higher risk for mortality in the first year after a hip fracture. So their recovery and their mortality and their loss of independence can be greater than what a female may experience. So all the more reason, we still have to do a good job of monitoring our bone health and keeping our bones healthy and strong. The other thing that I want to mention here is that many people, as we age, we've been healthy, but many of us develop chronic medical conditions or chronic diseases, for instance, like high blood pressure or high cholesterol or diabetes. We may have, altered kidney function. There may be other chronic diseases that we may experience as we get older, as our body starts to age. And so therefore, to control those diseases, we have to take certain medications, right, to take care of those things, to keep the risk of those complications at bay for those diseases. Well, osteoporosis is a chronic disease, and there are many medications that can actually cause the bone to be a little more fragile or a little more weak, or the quality of the bone to decline, but we need those other medications, right? So what's the balance? And what I explain to people is, when we're younger, it really is about running away from bone loss, right? When we're older, it's really about keeping everything in balance. It's about balancing out something that's bad for our bone with something that actually can be very healthy for our bones. So I want to just mention here that there are certain medications that can actually cause compromised bone health and bone strength. Now, I say this, I don't want you to stop your medications because you're worried about your bones. It's very important you don't change your medications. You need to talk to your healthcare provider about being on these medications and how they may affect your bones, right? So for instance, if someone has lung problems, or they have a rheumatoid problem, or they have an inflammatory arthritic problem where they have to take steroids on a continuous basis, then that can actually affect the bone. Usually it's oral steroids. If you have to take those longer than 3 months in a lifetime, that can affect your bones. There are other medications, though, that many of us may have been exposed to or know about. Things, breast cancer medications that people have to take, certain depression medications, certain rheumatoid arthritis medications, and certain seizure medications. Now, certainly this list is not exhaustive, but if you know someone that is on any of these medications, it's important that they take a good look at what their bone health is like, get a bone density if appropriate, and have a really good conversation with their healthcare provider so that they don't let bone loss sneak up on them and they end up with a fracture. Okay. So what is osteoporosis? It is a skeletal disorder characterized by compromised bone strength that predisposes someone at risk for a fracture. So remember, if your bone strength is compromised, if your bone density is low, or it's really low in osteoporotic range, or you have compromised bone quality from medications, medical conditions, your bone strength can be compromised, and this puts you at risk for fractures. Okay, so what are the universal precautions that everyone knows? Well, we know we need to take adequate calcium and vitamin D. There's a lot of concern about the amount of calcium we should take. I can tell you that the Bone Health Osteoporosis Foundation and the bone health experts like myself across the country, it is still very recommended to have calcium supplement every day if you are not getting enough in your diet. We certainly want you to get enough calcium in your diet, and that may be enough for you. But if you're not, nutritional wise, then you should consume a supplement of calcium a day along with what you're getting in your diet. Usually it's 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams for women that are postmenopausal, and men 50 and older. The vitamin D is usually, we also want you to make sure you're getting enough vitamin D, and that's usually around 1,000 to 2,000 units daily. You need to treat a vitamin D deficiency. The range that we try to target for is around 45 to 75. So if your level is low, talk to your provider about how to get that up. Regular weight bearing and resistance exercises, muscle strengthening exercises. What happens when we get older If we don't work our muscles turn into flab, but we lose our strength. Okay, so we have to keep some muscle mass, and so it's very important to work on regular weight bearing and muscle strengthening exercises. You also want to work on falls prevention and personal safety. Take up those throw rugs in your home, fix that threshold that you might keep tripping over. Make sure if you have pets, little pets, that they don't get under your feet and cause you to fall. If you're a smoker, definitely try to work on quitting smoking, and then avoid excessive alcohol intake. So those are all the universal recommendations for osteoporosis treatment. But here's some interesting facts. Recently, a study showed that half of all women over the age of 50 had osteoporosis and low bone mass and didn't even know they had it. That means that we haven't done a good job of prevention, making people aware, or testing people, right? Only 35% of American adults consume the recommended daily allowance of calcium intake. People think that if they just exercise, that's going to be enough. If you are at high risk for a fracture, if you have osteoporosis, yes, you need to exercise. You need to be careful the type of exercises you're doing, but exercise alone is not enough to reduce your risk of fractures. Okay, and then there's your answer. 1 in 2 females and 1 in 4 males over the age of 50 are likely to have an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime. Now, there are some modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. Certainly, you can modify your nutrition. You can talk to a nutritionist about what you can do for your bone health, the calcium, the vitamin D, the physical activity, smoking cessation, alcohol intake. All of those are modifiable, but there are some things we simply cannot change, and we have a birthday every year. We can't stop that. We're given a birth date, but not an end date, and people are living longer, and they're living longer, and they're living independently longer. And this is what we want them to continue to do without fractures. You can't change your height if you're short statured. Your weight, you may or may not be able to control as well, but keeping your body mass index, if it's really, really low, you need to work on nutrition and those kind of things, because that puts you more at risk. If you have a family history, if you're on certain medications that you need for other chronic diseases, and we can't, menopause happens to all of us, all the ladies at some point in time. So really, I just kind of want to wrap up things with just by saying, when should you be tested? Well, younger women who are at higher than normal risk for fractures, and that would be if you have early menopause, if someone's gone through menopause before the age of 45, if they are on steroid treatment, if they have certain medical conditions and medications that they've been on, those are the reasons that they would want to get tested earlier. Any woman 65 and older should be screened for osteoporosis. We are certainly recommending younger now. Women over the age of 50 or gone through menopause should get a baseline bone density earlier. Younger men and women, who are 50 to 69 should consider if they have risk factors for serious bone loss, and that's a conversation you should have with your healthcare professional. And then men by the age of 70, you should at least have a baseline bone density, because as your bones age, even if your bone density never changes or it stays the same, your age is what makes you more at risk. Because why? Because your bones are aging with you. So what are the warning signs of weak bones? What should you look for? Well, I've kind of trained my husband. We can be at a restaurant and he'll see somebody walk past us, and he'll look at me and say they have osteoporosis. So he knows the signs, okay? So osteoporosis is a silent disease. People don't know they often have it. That's what makes it scary. So what does it look like? If someone starts to have sudden back pain, sudden onset, you need to get that checked, especially if you're over 50. It could be caused by a fractured or collapsed vertebrae. If you've had loss of height over time, it is not normal to lose height. You should get that evaluated. A stooped posture. And then if you have a bone that breaks more easily than expected, that would be if you have a ground level fall from standing height and you've had a fracture. If you did not really have any injury and you fractured, that would be something that you want to get your bone health checked out. So when to treat? Well, if you have low bone mass, so if someone's ever heard of the word osteopenia, the way I like to describe it is, it's like a stoplight. So green is normal, yellow is caution, and red is stop. So if your bone density is in normal range, that would be green. If your bone density is in osteopenic or low bone mass range, then that would be caution, right? And then if your bone density is in red, that's definitely, wait, you need to go on some treatment. So if you have low bone mass or your bone density on your bone density test, and you have a high risk for a fracture in the next 10 years, which is easily calculated, you should consider treatment to reduce your risk for fractures in the future. Now, if you have had a fragile bone fracture and are greater than the age of 49, I like to say that because we don't want to leave the 50-year-olds out, but greater than 49, you should have a workup done to include a bone density test and to look for any secondary causes. And you should consider treatment for your bones to reduce your risk of fractures. Okay. So what does successful aging look like? Did anybody answer that question, Deb?
I have not seen any. If they want to jump in now,
Okay.
I can start monitoring.
Yes, jump in on the Q&A and let me know what successful aging looks like to you. And I hope someone says no fractures. So in the bone health world, as your answers are coming in the bone health world, the main thing that we're interested in for all of you is we want you to have the best health and the best quality of life. We want you to maintain your level of independence as long as you can. And we don't want you to suffer fragile bone fractures from aging because you were either underdiagnosed, not treated, not recognized, because those fractures can radically change your life. So our goal is your goal, for you to have healthy aging bones.
So some of the answers that are coming in are doing what I want to do, being
Yes.
independent. I'm going to jump in and say, getting to play with my grandchildren.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, and have adventures with my husband.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's you know, that's what we want. We want you to enjoy your life. I had a 98-year-old come in today, and she's not ambulatory now. She sits in a wheelchair, but she is still with it. She loves to crochet. She loves to spend time with her great grandchildren. And you know, you're never too old to treat your bones, right? And you know, it's like you said, Deb. You know, our grandchildren are going to remember us being active, right? We don't want them to know us as Granny in the bed. We want them to know us as Granny who played hide and seek, right?
Yes,
And did all these
absolutely.
great things with them, right? So this Cass Mountain it just acknowledges that we have over 5,500 fractures on a daily basis in the United States. This is an example of what that would look like, right? And so again, fracture risk ahead as we get older, our fracture risk increases simply because we're aging, but we can reduce our risk of fractures by taking those universal precautions, getting bone density tests as appropriate, and considering treatment when it's appropriate as well. Now, I've included some resources for you, and I want to just kind of turn it back over, I guess, to Deb, and I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns. I do want to just disclaim that I did not specifically talk about medications because I didn't want to, you know, get into that. But if someone has questions or whatever, I'm happy to address, you know, specific questions and generalities if needed.
Well, someone did ask the question, what's the difference between osteoporosis and osteopenia?
Yes, okay. Yeah, so it's all about the range on your bone density. So your bone density test, it gives you what's called a T-score. And that T-score is a standard deviation. So think about from 0 to +1, +2, +3, or 0 to -1, -2, -3. So when you get your bone density test back, it'll give you a T-score. And if your T-score is above -1, then that's considered normal. If your T-score is between -1.0 and -2.4, that is considered osteopenia or low bone mass, okay? And then osteoporosis is anything less than -2.5. Now, on bone density, they normally will check your spine, and they will normally check your femur and your hip. If you have a lot of arthritis in your spine and you know it, please ask them to check your wrist, because we want to see what your wrist looks like if we can't get your spine. If you have a lot of arthritis in your spine, your bone density can actually look better than what it is. And so you would want them to go ahead and check a wrist view if you have a lot of arthritis in your low back.
Another question is, and I'm going to just repeat it as it's written because I don't know what it means.
Okay.
Which SSRIs increase your risk for osteoporosis?
Right. So there's a whole group of them, but you have things like citalopram, or you might, and I have to give the like Lexapro, citalopram, fluoxetine, which is Prozac, any of that group, you can actually look them up online. And actually, if you'll go to the Bone Health Osteoporosis Foundation website, there's a list of medications that actually can cause more bone loss, and you will see a list of the SSRIs in there. Now, it's all, it's not all inclusive because there's a lot of SSRIs, but most of the ones that you may see would be like Celexa, citalopram, Lexapro, Prozac, or fluoxetine. Some of those is what you might see.
Well, it sounds like what your counsel is if we have concerns, the very first place to start is with our care provider.
Absolutely. Yes. You need to have a good conversation. You need to, because what's going to happen is when you go to your primary care provider, they're focused on your heart, your blood pressure, your diabetes, your blood sugar, your cholesterol. And by the time they get to the O's, sometimes there's no conversation. You need to bring up the conversation. You need to take them to the O's, okay? Because your bone health, all of those other things can be treated. But if you forget about your bone health and they don't look at it, and you need to be treated and you end up with a fracture, man, that's radical, right? But you can prevent it. That's what's beautiful about this disease. It is one disease that we can have the deepest impact with simple treatments, right? And if we catch it early, that's what makes it so treatable. So please have that conversation. Please have that conversation.
See, this is exciting for me to know that we all can be proactive about our health, our bone health, because I'm not done yet. I'm 65. And when I was a kid, when I was in my 20s, I thought when you hit 60, 65, you were mostly dead. I'm just getting started.
That's right.
Everything else has been a warm up to where I am now. So I intend to take this counsel to heart. And I want everyone on this webinar to do the same so that we can be around to play together a long, long time. I'm going to check. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. So we are going to be able to end on time. And I just thank y'all so much. And I thank you for sharing with us. I thank all of our attendees for being here, being a part. And I'm just hoping on November 8th, you make a date to come back and join us again, because we're going to have another amazing session. So thank you. And I hope everyone continues to play well and age well.